All right, everybody, welcome. I'm Tim Davis, president of the association. We have on our first Zoom session, we have Mr. Billy Strickland, executive director of ASAA. We have everybody muted right now just so Mr. Strickland can roll through his presentation. As questions come up, please put them in the chat. What we will do is I will send the chat directly to Mr. Strickland tonight or tomorrow. And when he gets back on us to email, I will send out all the question and answers on an email from the association. So without further ado, Mr. Strickland, welcome to the 2021 Coaches Clinic, and thank you for your time.
Well, I appreciate the invite and a chance to come just talk with you guys a little bit tonight. When Walt and Tim kind of approached me about doing something, their suggested topic was that I do a little presentation in terms of how football rules are developed, how more importantly to us probably, how ASAA policies and bylaws as they pertain to football get developed, and how as coaches you can have what we would hope to be a more active part of that. And so with no further ado, I'm going to start I put together a quick PowerPoint. I'm going to do that out. If I can get maybe Rick and Ryan, give me a thumbs up if you're seeing the ASA logo. All right, never trust technology. So moving through, oops, I believe. All right, here we go. So here's me. I use this photograph quite a bit of me holding the first National Bowl trophy. Not only to suck up to you as football coaches, but more importantly to me to suck up to my title sponsor. But this is year number 7 of me in this role. Prior to this, I was the Dean of Students out in Bethel, not a football town. I actually moved to Bethel my 9th grade year from southern Arkansas. And we used to give my dad a little bit of a hard time because he didn't tell us we were moving to Bethel until the last day of 2-a-day practices. And that would have been in the fall of '78. And back then, about all they did for heat acclimation is to tell you, get a salt pill. But he told us it was good for our character. But moving to Bethel kind of put the kibosh to my high school playing days. But I had an older brother that went to college on a football scholarship and really believed that high school football, where it works, is it's hard to beat as a high school activity, because as coaches, you can involve so many students in that activity, and it needs all types of body types. You need the big kids, you need the small kids, you need the fast kids. You can find a way, and I've seen this, throughout what I've seen. You guys find a way to put a hardworking kid on the floor. I mean, on the field. They get a chance to play if they're working hard for you. And I think, and that's not always easy to do in sports like basketball, where you're real limited in how you can play kids. I've told people this is an updated photograph of me after dealing with a year of COVID. You guys look worse than I do. It's been a tough year on us all. All right, no further ado. Just a real quick history of ASAA. We trace our roots back to the early 1950s, when there was a group called the Western Alaska High School Activities Association. If you go look in some of the old trophy cases, you'll see that is still in some of your trophies, when you were once upon a member of the Western Alaska High School Activities. I asked somebody one time, I think I might have asked Hoskins, it was like, why is West Anchorage's letter an A? It's because it used to be Anchorage High School. Okay. I think Lathrop's is kind of the same way. Yours is an F still, if I remember right. So, our roots compared to a lot of states aren't as deep, but we go back to the 50s when these two groups kind of merged because they saw a need to get basketball out of the city leagues. Then in 56, under still the territorial Department of Education, there was ASAA was formed. So our official birth would have been the fall of '57. Then, this kind of continued on into the 70s, when the state added us under and we at one point were placed under the Department of Education. So there was a time in the 70s we were part of the Department of Education. The regions, initially 5 and then 6, began to form, and then our board added those as board members, along with a representative from the School Boards Association and the Superintendent's Association. And then we have a non-voting student member now. Okay, so this carried on. Then in 96, Department of Ed eliminated all funding for us. So they said, we're still under your control, we're just not going to fund you anymore. So at that point, we became a nonprofit 50c3, and we've operated since July 1987. And then it was kind of like there was this, we were under them, but we were a nonprofit. So in 95, the law was rewritten that we were no longer under Department of Education. So currently the ASAA Board of Directors is made up of these individuals. Region 1 is Pat Callahan from Nome. Region 2, James Stickler from Sioux Valley out in Talkeetna. Dale Ewerts from Palmer. Megan Hatswell, the principal at Chugiak, is the Anchorage Region 4 rep. Troy Thane from Craig, which is down on Prince of Wales Island, which you go to Ketchikan and keep going further south, you hit POW Island. Also on Region 6, Dan Klein is the athletic director at Delta Junction. Jim Holeen is the superintendent's rep, and he's on Quawk. Actually, he's about probably 10 miles away from Troy Thane there in Craig. The School Board Association is also a person from Delta Junction. Dana Mock represents the School Boards Association. And then our student government rep is now going to be Harrison Little, who actually attends West Anchorage. Region 1 is this huge geographic region. So when I was in Bethel, our geographic region one year for basketball, our conference one year went from Dutch Harbor to Barrow, which I tell people it's about the same distance as Miami to Boston. Okay, that was our basketball conference. Region 2 is a real gerrymandered group. They are the 1A and 2A schools on the road system and any of the villages such as Fort Yukon, Arctic Village, that kind of hub out of Fairbanks, if you will. Region 3, we define as South Central, but you guys would think of that as the 3A and 4A schools in the Mat-Su Valley and on the Kenai Peninsula. And then they also include the private schools of Grace and ACS. Region 4 and the Anchorage School District is the same thing. Okay, it's the same entity. Region 5 is Yakutat South. Region 6 are the Fairbanks School Districts, Delta Junction. Valdez is now a member of Region 6, as is Galena. Okay, but that's kind of the makeup. And then I wanted to throw in this slide because my board makes a lot of decisions, obviously, when it comes to football. Region 1 has 801 member schools. 1 plays football. That would be Barrow. Okay. Region 2 does not have a single school that plays football out of their 49 member schools. Then we get into kind of the football regions, if you will. Region 3 has 11 out of their 13 member schools that play football. The 2 that don't are the private schools of Grace and ACS. Otherwise, all of their schools play. Region 4, 8 out of 8 play football. Region 5, 1 out of 25. And I say 1 football team because really they have the co-op now between Thunder Mountain and Juneau forming that 1 team. And then Region 6, 6 out of their 9 members play football. Those that don't are escaping me off the top of my head right now. But again, you know, heavily involved in football, Region 3, Region 4, Region 6. Region 5, I think, has a lot more history of following football than Region 1 does with just the one Barrow team playing. So the board in of itself is not always made up of people that really come from football minded regions. So just bear that in mind as we get to it a little bit later in the presentation. Football playing rules, the actual what's allowed during the games, are established by the National Federation of High School, often called NFHS. So the NFHS, we have a bylaw that says all sports will follow the National Federation of High School Association rules. And then we do list a few exceptions, but football is not one of the exceptions. So if the NFHS rule book changes, we automatically make those changes. One of the things for you guys to bear in mind as you're looking in the rule book is that certain things are allowed by state adoption, but they're not automatic rules. For example, in the playoffs now, the NFHS rule book does allow for the use of video replay. Specifically, I believe, as it's defined to ejections. Okay. We don't have that. We have not adopted that as a state. Right? Back hit. So within the rulemaking process, we follow. All states that follow the rule book are allowed to have a committee member on the rules committee. Texas follows the NCAA rules for football. They do not have representation on the national of the federation because they're not compliant with the rule book. Okay, but we do. Brian Hoskins sits on that committee for us. So in changing the rule books, if as a state we wanted to propose a rule change, we could do so. Particularly in football, any rule proposal that is made is heavily vetted by the sports medicine advisory committees. Okay, but there is a process there in place for changing the actual playing rules. So as a coaches association, if you came up with an idea and felt like we wanted to pitch it to the national organization, we would do so through Brian. Getting a little bit more local, there's two things with ASAA. There's the bylaws and the policies. Both to change either a bylaw or a policy, 5 out of my 8 voting members on the board have to approve that, have to vote in favor of it. It also requires for a bylaw that 30 days notice be sent out to the membership. Now, we don't have a lot of bylaws as it applies to football. We have the one that says we'll follow the NFHS rule book. We have another one that says football is an activity we sanction. So I don't really believe as coaches you would really ever think a whole lot or be interested overly in changing the bylaws as it applies to football. What you very much could be interested in is changing football policies. And right now, our policies include when the season is, what's the minimal practice rules, individual participation. We do have some on rules because we have adopted mercy rules, if you will. We assign conferences. We assign the maximum number of games. We have jamboree regulations. We have limits on individual participation. That's like how many quarters can a kid play in a day versus a week. We have rules on how we schedule. We have rules on the state championship, quarterfinals, finals, or semis, and so forth. And then we have those recommendations in place for concussion and concussion management. Policy changes can be done at any meeting and do not require a 30-day notice. Going back to bylaws, I meant to highlight, they can only be changed if it's a regular session meeting. We're not allowed by our own bylaws to call a special meeting to change a bylaw, but we could do so in case of a policy. The process for changing our bylaws, our policies is this: the items got to get added to the agenda. So how do things get on the agenda? There's really 3 ways, okay? The request can be made by any ASAA board member. So often regions bring us policy changes. ASAA can add something to the agenda. Specifically, as football coaches, when we do our football activities committee, that group, if there is it almost has to be unanimous. They can then bring a suggestion, and through the committee, it gets on the agenda. So as ideas come out of your association, I think you need to work with your activities committees, okay? Because this is the group that can formulate ideas and take it straight to the board. So right now for Division 1, Cook Inlet, that's Coach Davis. You know, for Division 2, Rail Belt, Luke, I think he's on here tonight, Galen Brantley from Soldotna. The Middle Alaska kind of got reworked, but it is Glenn Nelson from Houston. And then Denali is going to be open because it was Dave Devon, and with the reconfiguration of that conference in Division 3, they'll be there. So I think, you know, as an association, this group can forward your ideas, okay? And we're glad to hear them. But also, you know, when I created these, so after my first year as executive director, I'd go to region meetings, and, you know, there's not too many swim people there. There's not too many tennis people there. It tends to be, you get wrestling people, basketball people, some football people there. I'd say there's not tons of football people at, you know, coaching types that are on those regional seats. So I wanted to have a way where the people in the trenches would have a way to make proposals to the board. But I also wanted it to be about what can we do to make our sport and our activity better? How do we grow the sports? So once an idea gets to the board, it's normally put in as a new agenda item or new business or discussion. And there's not really an expectation that action is going to be taken then. So somebody throws out an idea, the board members discuss it, and then they take it back to their own regional board members or to their boards, to the region meetings, I'm trying to say, to discuss it. Okay. Then an item can be voted on at the next meeting. So the first time the board sees something, there's never really an expectation that there's going to be action taken, because board members are hearing this often for the first time. They want to take it back and vet it with their own people. Once it comes back the second time to a board meeting, it comes back under old business or action. And at that point, it can continue. And then it can be voted on, or it can be tabled to a future meeting. So that's generally kind of how, you know, the old, I'm just a bill. You guys are younger than me. You don't remember Saturday morning showcase. But, you know, that's kind of how a bill becomes a law with ASAA. It's got to get on the agenda. It's got to usually be vetted at the regional levels. It comes back to the board, and then something can happen. In following that process, where you can do that is if you go to our website, asa.org, under the About menu, you'll see a tab, Board of Directors Board Meetings. And if you go to that tab, usually within about a week and a half prior to a meeting, the agenda will show up. And then we'll have the adopted minutes down below. So we just had a board minute or meeting on the 26th, on Monday of this week. By tomorrow, will be posted the unadopted board meetings so people can see what actions the board took. And then at our next board meeting, they'll adopt those minutes officially, and they'll change from unadopted to adopted. But that's kind of what I wanted to kind of go over with you guys tonight. The one thing I know about presentations is generally no one cares if we get done a little bit early. So Tim, I don't know if there was any chat questions that you wanted to ask, or we can open those up, but and I don't mind going over some other subjects as well. I think we do have a little bit of time.
We got about 4 minutes, guys. If somebody has something, go ahead and drop that either in the chat, and we'll address that. We're going to shut down here about 6:55 and get ready for our next presentation. But if you do have something, you guys can go ahead and here's your chance. About
And Tim, if you just want to keep that open through the end of the conference, just tell people to email you questions and then compile them and send them. I don't mind taking a list and answering them to the best of my ability and sending them back to you guys.
We have a question from Coach Dennis. He asked, what is the rule for quarters played in a week?
So good to see you, Mike. I'm glad to hear you're back helping, taking over the Diamond program. I think that was a great move for them. One of the things you got to make sure when I'm answering this question is ASA and your conferences could have different rules. Okay. So as it applies to quarters per week, I'm gonna pull that up real quick on the football policies. Tim, do you know what you guys are allowing as Region or Cook Inlet now?
We were 6 until COVID. COVID pushed us back and took the 6-quarter rule away. So we will, as we get back into meetings with Principal Green over at East, we'll confirm. I'm going on a limb that we're gonna have that 6-quarter rule back. We'll just have to see. It was taken away because of COVID.
Right. So we allow 6 a week, except for a kicking specialist can do 8.
Correct. Provided
that in 4 quarters the player does no more than kick. So you could have a punter or a place kicker or a I guess kickoff person playing up to 8, but 4 of those they can't do anything but kick. It seems like that should be no more than 2, so they could play 6 regardless, and then 2 more extra ones as kicking. So that may be something you might consider. But that's where we are with that, Dennis.
Here's one from Luke Baylash, and I want to get to this one because this one probably will take up the rest of our time. And again, guys, shoot these off in emails, and we will make sure that this is an ongoing dialogue. But Coach Baylash up at Lathrop asked, with the growth of 7-on-7 football as a significant tool in recruiting, is there any chance we could see a change in allowing football coaches to coach these teams? This would require an adjustment of coaching travel teams January to April.
So our out of season rules right now say when you're outside the sanctioned season, you can coach up to 6 hours a week with any contest counting as one of those 6 hours. So if I don't know when you go to 7-7, like those games, like how many of those games are taking place, over a weekend? Is that like 6? But if it was 6 games, theoretically, you could go down and coach in 6 games outside of your season. And if we needed to tweak that a little bit, I think, that could be something that would be brought up again through the process of adopting the out of season rules. But right now, when you're outside, as soon as the last state championship game's over, you're allowed to coach your kids. You can instruct it. You can run it. The only rule that really is in place then is you cannot make attendance mandatory, okay, as a condition, because we want to keep that in place so that, basketball coaches weren't telling football kids don't play football because I need you in the gym and vice versa. But, we think schools can work together on that. What is a typical 7-on-7 weekend like? Like
Right
how
now-
many games?
Well,
I mean,
right now it's a round robin type tournament. They play for about 2 hours in the on Sunday nights in the Dome. That's what the current private.
If you went to like an out of state, like I know Arkansas, I know a little bit, they do 7-on-7 in the spring, but when those teams get together, like in a weekend, how many games are they typically playing?
It's different up here. It's been different up here. It's 2 hours worth of football is what is basically
Right.
what it amounts to.
So if you played a game, if West is playing Lathrop in a 7-on-7 game, even if that game lasts an hour and a half, it only counts as one of your 6 out of season your weekly hours. Okay. And I'm stumbling and not explaining that super well, but we did that because we want you to have contact with our students because you're good for our kids. Okay. It's good for our coaches to be around our kids. Okay. And there's some other places kids can get to with some other adults that we don't think always have their best interest in heart, like we believe our high school coaches do. So it was important to us that we opened up the ability for coaches to have that contact. And kids are more excited about coming to those stuff when they're getting coached, and so forth. So I think I'm running out of time, Tim, but
Well, thank you again for your time. We're gonna put this up on YouTube. We do want this as a running dialogue. If we have questions for you, we'll probably put something together Saturday afternoon and just let questions come in over the weekend. And then tonight I think it's 7:45, guys, we have our open forum where I'm sure this is going to be a topic that we talk about ways that we can advance the game and advance our ability to coach and stuff. So thank you again, Mr. Strickland. And we're going to end this Zoom. We're going to open up the next one, and we're going to have the presenters probably start about 7:05, 7:10. Let's say 7:05 right now, just to stay on time as much as possible. And then we'll give you guys a chance to hit the head or whatever you got to do. So go ahead, go back into the clinic link, find the next clinic. We'll open that up momentarily. We'll see you guys over there. Thank you again.
Enjoy, guys.